Real life street stars.
He predicted it.
Yeah.
He saw it coming.
The verdict is in. Diddy
Not
guilty.
Almost.
Almost. He is guilty of prostitution.
Right.
So that in itself, and that's kind of what we said at the onset, that was the only one that was clear and cut. I don't think it was clear from the Punisher's point of view, but there were several of those men that they flew in who were gigolos. And so that's all they do is prostitution. So it was clear cut on that one. So I knew the jury wouldn't have a problem with that.
Right. And prostitution, it's really not that crazy of a charge, right? Is it like,
It's not, but it goes back to our conversations every time, I get pulled back into the whole criminal discussion.
Right.
It's when you start crossing state lines that you start getting the feds involved in these cases. And the fact that they were flying prostitutes in from other places is what did this in and what he was charged for.
Right. Now break this down for me, because before the verdict came out, they were talking about a juror number 25 that they wrote a letter in. Like, I guess they were 90 minutes deliberating, and they wrote a letter saying, hey man, he's not following the rules. What do they mean by that?
I mean, it could
so
be...
there's rules to being a juror too? Like,
Yeah.
You can't just be like, no, I don't agree with this?
No, I mean, there are... Now, that's an interesting question, because some of the rules are you can't bring in and utilize things outside of the testimony that was given. And so, which could have happened, I'll give you an example of what could have happened. You could have had someone who was in the lifestyle and they were speaking as far as being an expert on the lifestyle in this case. And so, it might have been some jurors who took offense with that and said, hey, look, you can't just be bringing in different things or talking about different things and bringing this into, we can only really talk about the evidence that we have. Did Ms. Ventura, her testimony, did you believe her testimony in the fact that she was sex trafficked and coerced into doing these acts? And so anytime you start bringing in things outside of that, that becomes a problem.
As a juror, are you really just allowed to ignore facts? Like, I know they try their hardest to catch people who have a bias, but what if someone slipped through and was like, I just don't like Puffy, and regardless of what I see right in front of me, he's guilty? I
mean, it happens, man. Oh. It happens. I had a trial that I did, and it was odd, right? I had this black guy who was like, I don't like you, right? He was right off the bat. I don't really cut for you. And I had this white guy who served in the armed forces and older dude, and he was like, I can follow the law and so forth and so on. So we went through the trial and we got a hung jury. And it was, the black guy walked up to me after the trial. He said, look, man, you proved that case without a doubt. It was beyond you hit a home run on that. I wasn't really for you, but when I saw you in trial and the evidence that you proved, you were spot on. He said the guy who you probably thought was with you, he wasn't. His thing was, police officers don't arrest people for no reason. And even though the guy didn't commit this crime, the police officer knows that he's a bad guy and he should have been in jail. Oh, wow. Yeah. And so that guy got by me. The guy who didn't like me, he got in because I thought he was going to get struck for cause, and the judge let him in. Mm-hmm. And so it messed me up because I had already used my strikes. And so I was stuck with him. And in that case, the judge basically told the prosecution that they're not retrying that case because I had blown it up so badly that they couldn't retry it and they couldn't put their witnesses on anymore because I had impeached them so bad that if they tried to clean it up after the fact, it would obviously be perjury. So we won, but we just didn't get an acquittal.
Right. All right, so now he's been convicted, right, of two of the 5 charges, which are the lighter charges. He beat the RICO case.
Right.
Explain what just happened.
I mean, we talked about it, and I think anybody who's been watching this trial and watching other people talk about it, the RICO was really the one thing that was going to be difficult for them to prove. Several things that they tried to use. They tried to use the arson. Nobody really said they saw him do it. Right. They just said he was acting in a threatening or menacing way around that period of time and showing up at Kid Cudi's home. They said he was, they accused him of kidnapping. If he was going to Kid Cudi's house, he had a gun. I guess he was prepared for whatever was gonna go down, if it was opposition. But it never seemed, even during her testimony, she never really testified that he pointed a gun at her and told her, get in the car, I'm gonna shoot you. He just said, basically, come on. And so it didn't, even when she was giving that testimony, it really didn't seem like it was kidnapping.
Right.
The testimony of both Jane and Ms. Ventura, there was not anything there as far as dealing with kidnapping. The sex trafficking part, I think they may have gotten there, but you needed another subsequent crime. And then the drug, I honestly thought that they may have had him on the drug portion of it, because he was using people to purchase drugs. However, he wasn't using individuals to purchase drugs for distribution.
Right.
He was using it for personal use. And so the jury probably took all of those things into account and saying, okay, this is circumstantial, this is circumstantial, this is circumstantial. Sex trafficking, we can ride with that one, but there wasn't enough linchpins in that for them to really grab hold to that on the RICO.
Okay, so now the conspiracy theories you're in, right?
Right.
So, when people were looking back at it, they said, well, damn, this is unusual that Homeland Security did the raid and the feds. He was raided by Homeland Security. So obviously they get the tapes. What's on the tapes? Do you buy into that conspiracy theory at all? Because when you look at this case, it was so weak. It's like, when you think of a RICO, you think, bro, hey man, it's over with. Everybody in the world thought it was over for Puffy. So it's like, did they just do that to get the tapes?
I can't say, look, I'll be honest with you, I don't think so. Yeah. I don't think so. I think, and I learned something new today myself from Ms. Ventura's attorney. Right. Right? And the fact, and using his words, he basically stated that there was an offer made to Ms. Ventura for 8 figures to settle this case. She rejected it. She wanted her day in court. She filed a lawsuit, but they ultimately settled the case. I don't know if it was less than 30 million, and they wanted more, and so they got their 30 million, so they dismissed their case. But I think, honestly, I told a group of friends of mine when that lawsuit came out and I read through it, I said, the feds are watching, because you can't tell me in your office, any of you guys who work in your office, when that came out, no one in that office read that.
Right.
And you have interns at the FBI, you have interns at law enforcement offices, DAs, prosecutors. And so you got a whole, and that's just, you got staff members, you got all kinds of people in there. Anyone who read that, who went to a AUSA or anyone and said, hey man, have you seen this? Have you read this? It has to be some kind of crime in there. And which was interesting, because when we had the Punisher on, right, basically not too long after that, they came and knocked on his door and asked him questions.
Did they?
Right, you talking about after the interview?
Right after they filed the lawsuit. They filed the lawsuit before they raided the homes. He was interviewed. And so I think, honestly, that lawsuit was filed. It opened up Pandora's box. And then at that point, the feds probably just went to investigate and probably found a loose string and just started pulling and found more and more.
Do you think the Punisher hurt his case or helped his case?
It depends on how you look at it, because even when we had the Punisher on, and I asked him that question, do you consider yourself a prostitute? And he said yes. And I asked that question because I disagreed with him. Right. He stated in his interview, and you guys go back and watch the Punisher on Real Life Street Starz. But if you watch that interview, he said, now about 10% of the time, I end up sleeping with these women. You know, if she's attractive and things just happen, I sleep with them. He never went there with the intent to sleep with them. Now, if a juror picked up on that, if I was a juror, I'd be like, you kind of wasting my time with this. This dude just came up, right? He just met the right freaky people. Right. He didn't have any intent to come here. Now, after the fact, you know, I think it's the second or third time that he understood that sex was going to be part of it. But I think even in his mind, he was under the impression that, because he said it, they had something. Because when he found out and she asked him, well, if you can't make it, can you send somebody else? You know, can you send Foz? And he was like taken back. He was hurt, right? So in his mind, I never believed he thought himself to be a prostitute.
Because a prostitute should not be hurt.
Right.
Usually don't involve their feelings.
Right.
It's the finances.
It's the Julia Roberts rule, right? No kissing, no this, there's no that. And so, or should I say the Pretty Woman rule? Not that Julia Roberts is prostitute. Yeah, but it's those rules. And I think he honestly liked her. And so it really still wasn't prostitution. It was basically, I'm getting paid to have sex with people who are kind of my people. I'm in a relationship with.
Now you had a lot of questions about his lawyer and the job he was doing. What are some of the critiques you took from him? Like listening to him, the services his lawyer provided, how involved he was. What did you think about that?
Look, man, anytime that you have a client in a situation like that, they offer the proffer report. The proffer agreement, and you tell your client basically, hey, look, make sure you tell the truth, right? Or you can't recall, but anytime that you lie to the feds on this, everything now that you said, you know, is coming at you, right? So just tell the truth. And so I don't know if he was fully informed after every meeting or before every meeting that he had with law enforcement. Because remember, he was saying things and his attorney was just sitting there. And so, you know, man, I just had really big concerns about his welfare and well-being because the right questions weren't asked. And he was just thrown out there. I was like, you know, hey, man, do you want your name to be out there? Do you want your face to be out there? You know, do you want to go as John Doe? Things like that, to ask your client, to give your client some options. I think it's just part of doing a good job.
Right. Why not give him a bond? Why not?
Because he was denied bond, right?
He was denied bond
Why
today.
not though? Like,
so there's a couple of different reasons. You know, there is the fact that we all know now that the judge holds Combs' future in his hands. He's going to decide how long he spends behind bars. He hasn't quite been there a year. Maybe the judge is saying to himself, I'm going to give him a year and then put him on parole or not parole, but I might just give him time served after a year. And so I'm just going to let him sit in there until sentencing. It could have been the fact that, like the judge stated, that his defense team even said that Sean Combs had a violent tendency. And so that could be, that was part of the reason why the judge said that he wasn't going to release him. But even then, right, and I'm just being on both sides, playing both sides on this one. Even if he was violent, he could have put him in confinement into his home with an ankle monitor on and basically said who he could and could not see. The judge could have done that and released him.
Yeah, that's what I'm like.
But at the same time, because of that video and because of the outcry and the heinous acts that he's done, the judge could have also said, the jury did their job, but I'm not going to reward you for not getting sentenced for RICO or sex trafficking. I'm not going to reward you for that. You've gotten your reward. You're not going to do more than the prosecution has asked for 20 years, but you're not going to do life.
How old was that video that, you know how old that was?
I think what did they say? 20, 27, 20. Yeah. It was sometime. Speaking of that video, because I took some heat on what I said about the employee security that called.
Right.
And when I said it was extortion. The reason why I stated it was extortion and I said that he made that call, at the time that the security guard called his supervisor or supervisors, because I think two other individuals took part of that money. Right. At the time that he made that call to them and said it would be this much, I don't care if someone asked you for a tape or told you, to get rid of a tape or they'll take care of you. You fed into that. You fed into that. And so that's where that could have been looked at as extortion, because now you realize that they want something and you placed a value or a dollar on that in order to turn it over. That's where I was coming with that as far as that call that was made. So I know a lot of people didn't like that, but I mean, it is what it is.
As if you were being a prosecutor, right? Mm-hmm. How would you have handled Diddy in this situation? Like, would you have felt like you've gotten the job done with 2 convictions, or do you think that you could have done more?
I think the prosecution did what they could with what they had.
Right.
Do I think they might have overreached? Yeah. I think I said from the onset that they put all of the video and all the sex acts out there to really convict him on that, but use these other charges to put the conviction on paper. And I think that kind of backfired in a way on them, because I think they did overreach on some of these things because they wanted to prove a point. But I think the prosecution did their job because he's not a nice person. Right? And he is someone who you probably can have concerns about being in general population. Right? He's running around beating women in the hallways of hotels. Think about this. If any of our wives, girlfriends, or mothers were walking in that hall that day and they tried to interfere, could he have done the same thing to them that he did to Cassie? That's something to think about, because that wasn't a regular, that wasn't no Ike Turner. That wasn't no Ike Turner pump, slap, get back in the house. When he picked up his bag and came back and kicked that woman. That's right. Dude, that is, man, look, that is some.
Have you ever seen Enough with Jennifer Lopez?
Yes.
When that coward tries to kick you while you're like the coward he is.
That is, and so that imagery And those acts were such that I think the prosecution did their job to try to prove a point, which is anybody, men, women, whoever you are, if you're out here and you're committing these type of acts, we're going to try to put you away. We're going to try to get you out of here. And I think they did their job when it comes to that.
And this just might be my conspiracy theorist mindset, but do you think that there's a possibility they're preparing to hit him with something else? Like, and that's why he didn't get a bond. Do you think they have something looming and this was just...
No, I don't think so, man. I don't think that they're really looking to come at him with anything else. Now, could one of these states
right
potentially charge? Because you got to remember, Michael Vick had the same situation where the feds came after him and the state wanted a piece as well. Right. And so you could potentially have an issue in dealing with that because he was found, if I'm not mistaken, within like the last 2 years, there may be evidence to show that he was in possession of certain drugs in one of these states.
Right.
That could be a problem. I can't remember or recall right now if they found drugs when they raided the house in Miami.
Right. I think they did find drugs in his house.
And so Miami could come after him with a drug possession.
And that's what I was waiting on, for some type of weird state charge to come up or something like that. I want to ask you, there's a lot of stuff going on outside the courtroom. People celebrating and pouring baby oil on themselves. When a judge sees that type of ignorance and what type of verdict, would that have any effect on the verdict he might render when you see people celebrating and doing like, oh, they really think it's a game?
Man, yeah. I mean, judges are people. Judges are human beings. They're not robots. We didn't program them. They're not AI.
Right.
Should they be robots?
No. No. There should be a human. There should be a human factor involved in that.
Because I'm thinking, and he said that. That's a great question because with the robot, you get what the calculation would be, but there will be no prejudice.
There also be no sympathy.
For sure.
So if just say, for example, you were getting sexually assaulted and beaten for over years, and you turned around and you killed the person who had been abusing you.
Got you.
You know what I'm saying? There's no looking behind the curtain and looking at it from a human factor.
Got you. That makes a lot of sense.
If you shot and killed the person who molested your child or was molesting your child, if you kicked down the door and somebody was molesting your child, a robot might say, you should have called 911 or you should have, tried to get them off. Not, you should have laid 9 shots in them.
Right.
It's funny, like, and I'm not going to say Jeffrey Dahmer, but like the Jeffrey Dahmer series comes out and somehow it humanizes him, right? Do you feel like this trial is going to humanize Diddy in a way where it may even inspire people to do mock baby oil parties, or it might even make him bigger as a figure? Do you think that's going to happen?
Bruh, the 4th of July, I need you guys to check with Johnson & Johnson and ask how much baby oil they sold. Because I guarantee you, it is going down.
It is.
I mean, just think about it. We emulate so many things. You can't tell me after this verdict,
Right.
and those who were outside celebrating and elated, there's not going to be a baby oil 4th of July party somewhere. Even within the sex industry, there could be a baby oil celebration.
Facts.
And so, it's just, man, it's just who people are. Not all people, but
Some people.
there are people who do that.
Freaky people. I think I want my cop to be a robot.
You want your who?
The cop to be a robot.
That might work out. That might work out for you.
I don't know. You ain't seen iRobot?
Yeah, they be tripping.
Yeah, but
I'm getting you.
It's so personal when somebody pulls you over, but the robot cop pulls you over, and like, hey, yeah, I was speeding, because that's what your calculation says.
But you gotta be careful about that, because quiet is kept. I've been a part of groups, think tanks that have talked about suing AI for that exact fact, because a lot of the AI programs that you have, they're still programmed based on statistics.
Right.
Those statistics are biased. If I told the robot that 35% or 40% of the people in jail are black,
Right.
but they only make up 12% of the population, so that the chances or likelihood of someone black is breaking the law.
Right. That robot pull up on you.
The robot pull
He's
up
black.
on you. Yeah, and you black. It's going through its checklist.
Right.
Do I smell weed?
Yeah.
Does he have a weapon? Is the vehicle registration? Speaking of that, man, I said it before, man, y'all stop riding around here with your registrations out and giving these officers a reason to stop you. Stop doing that. Stop riding around with these fake paper tags and giving them reason to stop you.
Why do we do that as black people? Why do?
Because of the toll. They killing us with the tolls.
No, it's not just the toll, bro.
I can't say, I'm not going to speak to the psyche of it.
Right.
But.
'Cause I used to do that.
Right.
I don't know why I used to do that.
Right. I can't tell you how many times, almost every weed charge I had from a client was based off of, maybe 60% of them were expired registration.
Right.
And it was just like, dude, why are you riding around smoking weed in a car that's dirty?
Right. That makes no sense.
I think that speaks to the priority, because a lot of those people are like, yeah, I just want my drugs. Like, they don't care. Like, as long as they can get the weed.
Okay. But
Can't have when you locked up.
it's a setback.
Sure.
It's a setback, right? You barely got enough money to buy your weed and have a place to live. Okay, you know what? 1 week don't buy your weed, get your registration straight, get you some insurance, and move on. Right? And just pick up weed the next week. But instead of going to jail, losing your job, now you can't find an apartment. It just causes too much setback.
How better would a black man be if he stopped smoking weed? Can I say that?
Look, I can't say that. Only thing I will say is we can't do, I like this segue, we can't do what everybody else does.
Yes, that's good. I like how you put that, Larry.
And I'm gonna tell you, and I'm gonna give you a perfect example. And going back to Diddy, Robert Kraft.
Yeah.
Just look that up, Robert Kraft.
The owner of
The Patriots.
Yes, he's been doing. He's fouled.
Massage.
No, but he flew from Boston on his way to the Super Bowl in San Francisco. I don't know what your viewers know about geography, but Miami is not on the way to San Francisco from Boston.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Not just that, but he went to an area of Miami that many of us might not even go to a shopping strip. A shopping strip. A billionaire going to a shopping strip that has $2 stores. Think about that. A billionaire flies to Miami to go to a neighborhood, to go to a shopping strip that has $2 stores and a massage parlor. Mm-hmm. He gets caught because...
Did he have to do that though? Like,
no.
he did.
Look, I'm not a billionaire and I'm finna get beat up about this, but I'm old. So I try to take care of myself. So I have a physical therapist who will come to my office once a week to make sure and work on, because I got dislocated shoulders, who makes sure I'm straight, right? I'm not Robert Kraft. I don't own multiple airplanes, right? I'm not a billionaire. You a billionaire. You can literally have a table built on your plane, have someone massage you on your plane to San Francisco, and then fly them back home on a commercial flight. It was cheaper in gas to do that than to fly to Miami and then fly from Miami to San Francisco. So that flight might have taken maybe $30,000 to $40,000.
You think it's the danger of it that he probably gets off at?
No,
Real.
no. It was
Sex trafficking.
Yeah, it was because when the feds raided that place, he just so happened to be there when they were investigating.
Oh my God.
Oh shit.
He's like, this is Robert Kraft?
Wait, let me ask you this. Him being a billionaire, how did he not get that suppressed? You being the
No,
lawyer.
he did.
No, the video. We seen the video.
Well, let me. Did he get charged?
No, but I'm saying, how did the video get out? Like,
Listen.
they have a video with him in the shop.
Listen what I'm saying.
Oh, you ain't. Oh, yeah.
The fact that you seen the video and he's not charged
It's wild.
shows you
Oh, yeah.
that we can't do what they do.
Right.
You just can't.
Can't do
Robert
it.
Kraft knows this.
Yeah.
Because Robert Kraft not only got the evidence suppressed, but they refused to appeal it.
Yeah, that's that type of power there.
Look, and no matter what we say, he still will not be charged for this.
He got 7 rings, bro.
And on top of that, when Deshaun got in trouble, he was the main one saying he need to be suspended longer.
That's crazy. That should be there. I forgot about that.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that was state. I don't understand why the feds didn't pick up that case. Why the feds didn't pick up Robert Kraft's case, right? Where was the outcry for that? And, I've asked a couple of people, is it because they were undocumented? The women were undocumented? Like, we don't care about undocumented women? We should care about all women. I'm a little incensed about that because that bothered me. I do those cases. I don't like sex trafficking cases.
Right.
I take those very personal. But the fact that we have cases out there dealing with women who are undocumented and we're not going full throttle on those cases is problematic to me.
Is the Diddy not guilty verdict a win for black people, right? Because that's how it's almost feeling like OJ again, where we're starting to see a lot of black people celebrate the fact that he's not off. That he got off of that.
There's still a sense of the criminal system is biased. The criminal system is biased. It's biased against people of color. And so when you have verdicts like this, it shows that segment of the community that it can work. But the problem is, and I heard someone say it today, OJ,
Yeah.
Sean Combs, Bill Cosby, they all basically did not get hit with the full throttle of the law because they could afford great attorneys.
Right.
They can afford great attorneys.
Speaking of great attorneys, Brian Steele just beat 2 Ricos back to back. Explain how hard that is. That seems unprecedented.
The dude is a monster lawyer. A monster lawyer. Matter of fact, we're gonna try to get him here. He's a monster.
Brian Steele.
He's a monster lawyer. And but there are key elements to a trial also. I told you that even though Steele was a great lawyer, I told you guys Woody messed that case up. Mm-hmm. I told you that at the time That case went on it's the longest criminal case, the longest case in Georgia history. And nobody can remember anything about that trial and any other witnesses other than Woody.
It made him a celebrity.
It did.
Not only did it make Lil Bro a celebrity, but it showed a side. They were locking this man up and not feeding him and not letting him sleep and putting him through mental anguish just so that he would testify against Thug. And this guy said all of this from the stand. And he made a mockery of the prosecution. And so because of that, no one could remember anything but him.
And that was their witness too, right?
Right. And so when we go back there to deliberate and then we say, all right, man, what y'all think about this case? Man, I can't even remember what everybody else said. All I know is Lil Woody said Thug didn't do it. Right? That's all. And so every time you pull out okay, let's look at some of the evidence. Yeah, but Lil Woody said Thug didn't do it. That's the only thing I guarantee you those jurors went back there and said to themselves, and they came back, and even though everybody else took a plea deal, they acquitted the last two. Right. And so in this case, I think there were key elements that really rang the bell of the jurors. Number one, those text messages that the defense read into the record.
Right.
We're not seeing sex trafficking. We're not seeing sex trafficking. The Jane is texting and initiating and saying that she wants to do this. What we have here is basically a horrible relationship that involves outside the norms or outside the normal norms of sex. That's not a crime. And I think the jury looked at that and basically said that, okay, you guys hit us with more sex stuff than RICO stuff.
Yeah. Do you think this is going to discourage them going after any other celebrities that may live this type of lifestyle?
Oh, well.
Or maybe in the same vein?
Of course not. Of course not, man. It's not. It's they got a job to do. They got a job to do. And speaking on that, and you're talking about future, this is what I want to say. Any of those women that were harmed or have had similar things happen to them, speaking up early is important. Because she didn't come forward when the incident happened at the Intercontinental, the state couldn't bring charges. And so that was a lower standard and lower hanging fruit that they could have utilized. And so it's important that if you or your child have been harmed and sexually assaulted or abused, it's important to come forward early, because that's what really ends up doing the prosecution in. And so, because I've had calls come into my office and they were horrific. And they're like, this was done to me. He did this, he did that. And then I say, man, look, I think you have a case. When did this happen? 5 years ago. Mm. Were you a minor at the time? No. I'm not gonna be able to help you. You know, the statutes run on that, right? And so things like that play a huge role in this. You got to remember, in the Cosby case, they basically had to change the law to allow other victims to come forward. I remember that. Yep. And so, you know, make sure you understand, consult an attorney, give a call, and find out what your rights are.
Now, what you just said right there, and I think we see this happen a lot. A law getting changed just so certain people can be found guilty of something, or so more evidence can be brought against someone. Why is that even a thing? How is that allowed to happen? Like, why is that even a thing?
I mean, it's a change of time and in periods of time, right? You got to remember, slavery used to be legal. Yeah, until somebody say, this not right. This not quite right. And so laws like that are changed because when you have people who are minors or women who have been sexually assaulted, right? A lot of these women end up spending years in therapy before they can even talk about it, before they can even think about it. In some of them cases, before they can even remember what happened to them. And the whole time the clock is ticking. And so laws are changed to help adapt in that regard. And so, shout out to my sister, Victoria, who's a former state representative. She was one of the women who actually helped change the laws in the state of Texas to extend the time for outcries for women to come forward or people to come forward about bad acts.
And I know that it's very important for, victims, but women with buyer's remorse or women that see an opportunity, how can an individual be shielded from things like that? Or is it because as bad as this was for Puffy, he came out unscathed, but somebody else would have been destroyed. And it's all because of their sexual preferences.
The issue that you're going to have with that, right? I'm not saying it's not a thing. The issue that you're going to have with that is you're going to be hard pressed for there to be laws that would prohibit people from coming forward.
Right.
And that would be something that would be a deterrent for people coming forward. And so I don't see a law being passed to say, okay, you can file a sexual assault case or you can say this if you didn't do that. And a large part of it, I think, also is because of this verdict. That not guilty on the sex trafficking speaks loud and clear that if your defense team can show and demonstrate that it was more likely than not you were a willing participant, we're not going to charge you with that because we don't believe you because it's not beyond a reasonable doubt.
I guess the messed up part is, you sit in jail and they don't give you a bond and, your reputation is tarnished. And especially you have someone on the stand and I'm still actively paying their bills and they're here trying to tell you how, it just seems like a ploy to just destroy certain individuals.
Look.
And I'm not saying Puffy, he's obviously evil, but.
Yeah, he's a monster. He's a monster, but at the same time, it's a tale as old as time. You're going to always have people who are going to seize opportunities to try to monetize off of the pain of someone else.
Right. Can Puff Daddy sue when he gets out?
He could, but would he win? No.
Right.
No. I had a case in which I had a potential case in which this guy killed a former police officer. And we believe that his son, who was a current police officer, killed him while he was in jail. One of the issues that you had was his whole family was in jail for murder or some kind of violent crime. Even if I went to a jury, what jury is going to give the survivors or the surviving family, who are all murderers, millions of dollars?
Nobody.
Exactly. Right. So it's just, the legal system is interesting and the law is interesting, and that's why I believe a good lawyer plays both sides and understands the pros and cons. It's one of the reasons why he didn't testify.
Boy, that was
right.
a move.
Right? Because I said it by not testifying and not really putting on much of a defense, you basically told the jury, they haven't shown you nothing. They haven't done anything. So we don't need to say anything. Because when we close, we're going to tell you what they didn't say and what they should have said to you or what they should have proved to you.
When is it a good idea to take the stand and testify?
No. It goes back to what I told you before. When we had the Punisher up here, what did he tell you? He said when the bright lights hit him,
Right. Got nervous.
almost lost his lunch.
Right.
And if they would have had to continue, he wouldn't have been able to continue. He had to, they went to break. During their lunch break, they got him together, composed them, and even going back out, it was still hard for him. Man, being in them bright lights ain't easy. And so because of that, you want to make sure that your client is solid, that they're prepped. You got to put them through the ringer. You got to make sure that they understand that if they make a side note, right? And I'm gonna say this, for all you who think you can do this, if I put you on the stand and I know you pop off at the mouth, I might ask you a question about your hair. And be like, is that weave baby hair, or did you not have any edge control before you came out here? Knowing that you might, it trigger you and you might snap, right? And as soon as you snap, you do this. Yeah. Got him. And so you can't put anyone on the stand. Oh, I talk about your mama, right? Like, oh, let me ask you some questions. So the fact that you did this, may it have anything to do with the fact that your mom didn't know who your dad was or anything of that nature? I'm getting up under your skin.
I was just going to ask, what can you tell when a person is unraveling? Can you see that? Like, are there certain...
I smell it. I smell it. I see you cracking. I see you cracking. I mean, I'll tell you, I had a case where I had this young woman on the defendant when I was a prosecutor, and she thought she was ironclad. Ironclad. Really, I think I told this story. Really, I thought this was a throwaway case. Like, I really wasn't that interested in it. And so, but I did my work because that's what I do. And so I was thorough. And so I was going through my questioning, and she said something, and I perked up. And then I went down and started asking more questions. I said, you're just lying. You was doing well. You was doing good. And then when I popped it on her, and I saw, I didn't even have to look up. The sheer silence, I could smell that she was cooked. And I looked up and she was getting ready to cry and do all this other stuff. And so I just asked her one question. I said, the last 5 questions I asked you, you really didn't tell me the truth, did you? No. I said, Judge, I'm gonna take a break. I gotta go to the bathroom. I did 2 things when I did that. I showed that she was a liar, and I showed that I have compassion as a prosecutor. And when I did that, I won the jury over. Because the jury usually expects prosecutors to be like they're on TV. Mean bastards who just, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna get you, I'm sending you to jail. I was like, nah, she's going to jail, but y'all gonna send her. And you gonna help me because you gonna see that I'm just trying to do the right thing.
Right. So if Diddy was charged, why is not everybody else being charged?
Didn't I not just say Robert Kraft?
Yeah, but I'm talking about like Cassie. I'm talking about Cassie not being charged.
They're not gonna do that.
No
man.
shade, Punisher.
They,
Yeah. Oh, what do you mean he didn't do nothing? He was a prostitute.
If he get found guilty, everybody.
Yeah. He was definitely a prostitute.
Yeah. Well, we still on the debate on that, but he did take money knowing that he was going to perform sexual favors at a certain point, right? He did run the risk of potentially being charged.
No, I'm talking about there's like a list of 10 prostitutes there. Well,
some of them were already in jail. No, for real. You got to remember the guy who was with the long hair, who was on the TV show Gigolo. Yeah. He was already in jail for manslaughter.
Right.
And then you had the other guy who was in jail for basically having a shootout with the police.
Right. Yep.
And so you had some of them who were already in jail. And then what's real interesting is I think the first escort, I think he had immunity.
Right.
But I think he was the one that was at the other party that Jane saw.
Right.
Like he had escort.
Right. He's the real deal. Hand on the Bible. When you have to put your hand on the Bible and be like, I testify to tell the whole truth, and
They don't make you do that.
you don't do that no more.
No.
So that's just the movies now.
Man, I am. You know what? That just goes to show that Rook is not a criminal.
Right. I'm not.
He is not a criminal. Because the last time he seen the inside of a courtroom was in the 80s.
Right.
Brother, they don't make you put your.
They don't do that?
No.
Oh,
they just make you. So
because I was gonna say like.
No, because most people.
You going to jail or you going to hell.
No, but most people at this point, man, a lot of people don't associate with any kind of religion.
Right.
So putting your hand on a book might as well be an encyclopedia.
So why not have a lie detector up there?
Yeah, that's not
Electric God.
That's not anything that you can use per se.
When did they stop that?
They never. No. So what happens sometimes with lie detectors is that if I have a case and I feel like my client is telling the truth, I might get my client to do a lie detector as part of a packet that I'm giving to a grand jury or to the prosecutor to prevent my client from getting charged.
Right.
And saying, okay, hey, look, we went to someone, this is the evidence that my guy is telling the truth or my gal is telling the truth. They didn't do this, they weren't there, so forth and so on. So sometimes that works out and they do it, but usually it's in a pre-trial or even prior to them being charged.
So going forward, do you think we're going to see more of these type of cases? Do you have your feelers out? Like, is there somebody you feel like could be next potentially?
I think the next person who should be concerned should be the person who had Jane on their plane.
Mr. West.
All right, I just wanted you to see that my mouth was moving and I was saying other things other than what was being said. I didn't say that. I have no idea who that is. I don't want to know who that is. And so this is for entertainment purposes only. However, I am a real attorney and I am the RealLyfe Lawyer. So we'll leave it at that. But they should be concerned because the testimony that Jane made really was quite interesting.
Can you refresh? I don't remember.
So
can you refresh us?
Jane said that she was upset at Puffy, and so she had a friend. Friend said, why don't you basically come with me and we're gonna go party with said person. So they got on said person's plane. When they got to said party, the same escort that was at Puffy's, that had relationships with Jane and possibly Miss Ventura, was there and doing similar acts. But it was a number of people who were watching these acts go on. That was interesting in the sense that if this is somewhat of a copycat or a similar deal, if I'm the feds, I'm finna get in trouble, man, because people gonna think I'm setting people up. But I would honestly look to see if there was a network, a sex network, in which basically the same escorts or the same people are being used to do multiple events for celebrities.
That would have made more sense for the RICO, right?
It would have. But
A prostitution ring.
Yeah. That would have made way more sense.
So that is what putting my prosecutor hat on. When I heard that, I was like, how my man Dion Cole do?
Yeah.
So you went there. Did you see anybody else you knew? Okay.
But what's the difference? What you described, wouldn't that be similar to like a sex party? Like a lot of people do sex parties where they do acts in front of people.
It does, but what was Combs found guilty of?
Prostitution.
Transportation of prostitutes.
Got you. Okay.
Do you think the videotapes will ever be released?
Do we live in America?
He said, "There's a dog poop."
Because I will tell you, if you just pay attention to the testimony, there were videos on an iPad that the employees had access to, right? And you can't tell me, anyone who's watching this, they've been anywhere and something was going down and somebody said, hey man, give me a copy of that. Right?
Yep.
I mean, we can go back to the R. Kelly tape. That was VHS. Right. You know how hard it is to make a copy of a VHS? and it was probably 30 or 40 of them tapes in every neighborhood.
Right.
Right? Now we talking about digital. Now we talking about, hey man, airdrop me that video.
Right.
Right?
That's when we spread like wildfire.
Exactly. Because I am pretty sure either through the dark web or through one-sided consent of some sort, it's going to be released.
How petty is the feds? And I'm asking because we
I'm
have
not
a number
answering
of
this question.
Huh?
Not answering this question.
Okay.
No, I'm messing with you. Go ahead.
because we have a number of celebrities, one being Boosie, who was almost brought to tears at the verdict. Do you think the feds see that and be like, man, see what we got on Boosie, man? Do you think the feds have a petty streak?
I'm not going to say that they have a petty streak, but I'm just saying that they will do their job vigorously. And I have seen them do things that made me say, man, like, man, they dead. You still popping off like that? So yeah.
So, okay. I feel like this whole case, right? What is your take on this whole case? Like when you were first looking at it, did you predict this outcome?
I think I said that they were going to have difficulty with the sex trafficking based on the testimony of Ms. Ventura from day one.
Right.
Because I got roasted online about it. I said that the RICO was difficult, but I think they did touch enough. Because if you think about it, the RICO was the one that the juries came back with a question.
Right.
That was the question that they came back with.
Right.
Right. But they had to find at least 2 subsequent acts. And so I think part of that was the problem. I said that the transportation of prostitution was clear.
Right.
Because of the first guy who came up, he was an escort. Subsequently, the other guy from the Gigolos, I don't know much about the other men. They could have been like the Punisher. They could have been dancers who just came up on a sexual come up. But there were several of those men who were just purely escorts, prostitutes. And to have them fly in, you're transporting prostitutes.
What do you say to the people like Funkmaster Flex just made a post, right? And there's other people making a post now kind of aiming at Cassie saying, hey man, you kind of try to hit a lick. You got 30, you went in there, you're trying to railroad him. Now you wrote a letter basically saying don't give him bond. Now he don't get bond. What do you say to the people that are now starting to aim at Cassie?
Man, let that woman be. I mean, let that woman be. I mean, we're not her, first of all. And she's still someone's child.
Thanks.
And if I'm her brother, I'm taking offense and I'm flexing, right? And so let her be. She went through enough. She just had her child. Okay, she got money. But saying that is no different than telling a basketball player to shut up and dribble. You don't need to have an opinion. You shouldn't be doing this. You're getting paid millions of dollars to play a game. Shut up and just play your game. That's like telling her, you got $30 million. Shut up. You got $30 million. I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not her. I don't know how she feels and what she's gone through, but she went through enough that she sued him, and she got publicly roasted for that when she took the money. And then on top of that, she was on a stand where she got crossed,
Right.
and basically was made to feel or told, nah, you are a gold digger. The woman has been through enough, and she got to go home to her family. Let this woman be, man.
She got on the stand pregnant.
Exactly. She was pregnant and had a baby before the trial was over. She had a third child before the trial was over. Let this woman be, man. You know, this dude, he got what could be considered the best outcome from this trial other than a straight acquittal. Right? Nobody won in this. Nobody won. So, you know, I know this is for entertainment purposes and people want to hear crazy things, but man, look, you spend enough time with someone who has been through something, you know how rough this can be. Right. You know, and I know I've seen it way too much and seen it way too early firsthand of how this affects people who have had this happen to them. Let's talk about this judge.
Let's talk about this judge.
Let's talk about this judge. What is he gonna do?
Yeah.
So during the trial, at one point, he told the prosecution, hey, counselor, if they ask for it right now, I'm paraphrasing. He kind of gave the impression, if they ask for it right now, I'll give them a directed verdict. You guys haven't really shown me that there's RICO.
The judge said that.
Judge said that. Judge said that. He had questions like, okay, where's the RICO? And the prosecution like, we're getting to it. We'll get to it. We'll show you. That led a lot of people to believe that the judge could potentially give Combs a bail. It's like, hey man, y'all overreached, you know, you punched out of your league. I'm not gonna keep this man in jail any longer. He's not a flight risk, right? According to the statute that I could potentially give him 2 years or give him probation and cut him loose, right? Or I can give him 10 or 20. I have a wide range, but I'm gonna cut him loose because he ain't running nowhere, because he ain't got to worry about life. Right. Because of that, a lot of people thought that he would get bail. The fact that this judge didn't give bail, the fact that this judge brought up the fact that he was violent, now has a lot of people on their heels saying, okay, first time offender, is he gonna really go with that? Or is he gonna go with the fact that he might be a first time offender, but this dude is a career criminal? Because this isn't someone who's just going to decide based on the verdict. This is someone who's been in every conversation there has been about this trial. He knows things that all of us will never know because he had discussions in chambers. Remember, there was evidence that he kept out, but he knows about it. Everything is up for grabs for him in making this decision. Does he do what the prosecution wants, which is to stack the 10-year sentences? That gives him 20 years. Does he run them concurrent? Does he run them simultaneously together and give him 10 years? Does he look at the code and says, you know what, first time offender?
I mean, that would be ludicrous to give him a 20 ball, wouldn't it?
It can happen.
I know it could happen, but wouldn't it just...
He can give him a 20-piece.
Let me ask you this: there's mad people that have stuff to say about Diddy, right? Like we've seen, hell, Jag. We've seen big homies come up here and say, Gene Deal. When you don't see them on the stand, why would they not be on the stand? Like if they have these interviews out saying some of these things, why would they not be on the stand? If they could help the prosecution. Okay, there it is.
Look here, man. If I have a choice to put someone on stand that may have a history or may cause more confusion, because you got to remember, everybody that they put on that stand was pretty credible, right? It wasn't the defense. When I say that, the defense didn't come back and pop up pictures and say, well, you said this on, on Real Life Street Stars. I ain't gonna say no other podcast. Yeah. Or you said this on Tailor Made Conversations. Right. When you was on Tailor Made Conversations, you wore a suit and you said this. When you was on Real Life Street Stars, you had a hat on and you said this. Which one is it? Or they didn't have crimes of moral turpitude. So crimes of moral turpitude can be used against you if you go up to testify. And so, if they stole anything, domestic violence, any of those things that are considered crimes of moral turpitude. And so if you have individuals that have those type of convictions, then you can't use them.
It makes sense. But Gene Deal was the bodyguard. So that's why it's like, he was a bodyguard for him.
Bodyguards, look, I'm gonna be honest with you. If I've traveled and I got one big homie, my little brother, Marvelous Marvin in Miami. Whenever I go somewhere, he travels with me, right? So he got my back. So shout out to Marv. I got another dude. I know this dude been on papers before. Yeah. But at the same time, I know he is no stranger to conflict. Sometimes you have them type of dudes with you. So I don't know about your guy. I don't know if he has paper. He's ever been on papers, if he ever been arrested. I mean, he could have had a small case, like a check writing case. Right. That's still a crime of moral turpitude.
That's crazy, man. It's just because, like, when you hear some of the stories on the podcast, it makes him out way more of a monster than the people that actually testified. It didn't seem like they picked the people that can really speak to the monster that he was. You see what I'm saying? Or quote unquote, allegedly.
But let's go back. Does that testimony prove RICO? You see what I'm saying?
That's a good question. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. So why would I use them? They've already had a video that showed him kicking a woman who was in a fetal position. He a monster. We got him. If this was a case about him being a monster, he would be right up there with King Kong, Godzilla, Dracula, and Frankenstein. He a monster, right? So for Halloween, everybody's going as Sean Combs, and they're gonna scare the hell out of people. He a monster, but he wasn't on trial for being a monster.
So now he gets off, right? Let's just say they set him free, right? They say time served. Does he become better or does he become worse from this?
This is what, if I was his life coach, this is what I tell him. You got two phases of your life that you need to work on. The first one is you need to get counseling. You need to get some help. You need to get some help. And if you want a career, if you want to continue in this industry, you need to find help and you need to find your redemption story. Second phase, I'm going to tell you, is you need to use the first one to fend off people to protect your assets from all these lawsuits that you got coming. Because you got to remember, it's like 1 million people file a lawsuit against them, right? And so the feds just didn't decide to use those individuals in this case. So, I mean, he needs to work on those two phases, and he probably needs to get some help with his sexual
Deviancy.
I'm not gonna say deviance, right? Because if that's your thing, as long as you're not beating people and hurting people and things of that nature, man, that's your bag. I mean, there are relationships called thruples for a reason. And so, as long as you're not hurting one, but he does need to find someone to help him kick that addiction or that need to make it so, to put so much excitement in it that it becomes illegal.
Why do you think we didn't see Young Miami come into play? I thought that was going to be
a more interesting thing.
That was more interesting. We really thought we was going to see her come into play.
The last one.
I'm happy she didn't. I'm happy, man, because, you know, I've had the pleasure of meeting that young woman, and man, she didn't need that in her life.
Definitely didn't.
She didn't need that in her life.
I thought they was just going to destroy her just because, just innocent bystander.
No,
like.
she didn't need that in her life, man. She seems like she's good people. She seemed like she might have been kind of into whatever he might have been into. We don't know at what level she might have been interested in, but I do know that the time that he was on her show, there were some innuendos out there that were kind of interesting.
Did you not see when she basically talked to the Gina girl, right? And it was like, me and Puff had you on knees, da-da-da-da. Wouldn't that have led to being like, yeah, you kind of sex trapped? Like, I'm saying it just, some of the things that she said out of her mouth seemed like it would have led maybe to help the Rico case a little bit. No?
Bruh.
The Rico was kind of crazy to try to put on somebody, though. I ain't gonna lie.
It was, but they swung for the fences, right?
That's crazy.
Like if you had one fight that you can have that was a professional fight, and you had an opportunity to make money at it based on television sales, are you gonna fight me or Mike Tyson?
Mike Tyson, I'm getting knocked out.
Exactly. Exactly. You're gonna take that risk because the reward is there.
I'm starting to think they don't have what the 97% conviction rate.
Yeah, this ain't the feds that I knew back in the 90s.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah.
Well, it's a difference.
Fell off.
He said they fell off. No, that's not it.
The difference that you have now is the internet. You have the internet, and quite honestly, you have the president of the United States that has felonies, who has his whole mantra is he was wrongly convicted and prosecuted. And you have stories of exoneration. And so you have now more information out there that law enforcement gets it wrong, that gives people a more sense of, you know what, I have reasonable doubt. Like I told you before I got involved in the criminal justice system, my brother got arrested. And it was the wildest thing. This dude spent almost 3 months in jail in Texas for a crime in Arizona he didn't commit.
Yeah.
And so that showed me that, hey, it's something inherently wrong with this process.
Real quick, I know we've been talking Diddy, but there is another case going on right now. I just want to get your quick take on it, maybe your prediction.
All right.
Drake versus UMG. It's
Drake
like
versus who?
UMG. So, you know, the whole Drake saying that, you know, the pedophile, and basically UMG is kind of having to defend the lyrics that Kendrick had versus Drake. And basically it's almost like a First Amendment type of fight. Like, hey man, yeah, he said this, but he's just talking trash. Drake is feeling offended, like it's defamation. I don't know if you've been following it, but if you have, do you have a take? Do you have a prediction?
Tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna start following that. I'm gonna start following it. Because the other part is I'm actually a trial lawyer, so I've been in New York doing my own cases.
Gotcha.
And so, I got to pay the 9 to 5 or pay the bills with the 9 to 5. So, but I'll take a look into that one. But I'll tell you that when that was said, I was like, Drake, that's a lawsuit, baby. That's a lawsuit. Because the thing is, Drake is either playing chicken and hoping that they swerve off first, or he's going to be a bulldozer. Because first thing, I think we've all heard the analogy, you can't go into a movie theater and yell fire.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because people can get hurt. That's not your First Amendment right. You can't say something that can cause harm, especially when it's not true. Basically, you have a situation in which Drake is saying those lyrics are yelling fire inside of a movie theater. You said it. It caused me harm. It might have cost me endorsements. We don't know. Similar to what happened with Jay-Z and the attorney out of Houston. They filed the charges. He countersuing based on the fact that, look, dude, you affecting my money.
So the big thing they were saying, well, if Drake wins, then what about all the Chicago artists that lost people to the same thing? They saying Tuka's name, or people making fun of dead people. Can they then sue then too?
No, that's different. That's different. If I'm making fun of someone who is dead, right? Because I saw a video, dude was saying, he was talking, he's like something by a tree. Well, the guy was killed by a tree.
Right, who I smoke or something like that.
And so that's factual. He did die by a tree. He's making a story about it or similar situation. To sit up here and say that someone is a pedophile, bro, that is a serious accusation. Serious accusation. There could be club promoters. I mean, there could be all kinds of things that are happening.
Super Bowl?
Yeah, the Super Bowl was wild.
Yeah.
And all 100,000 kids screaming?
Yeah, that's a serious thing. And so unless they can find a young woman.
Larry, cut the shit. Nobody, not no nigga in the world thought he was really a pedophile, bro. Come on. You don't think that's a little pussy, though? You being a lawyer, you don't think that's a little pussy, bro?
No.
We didn't heard no Vaseline, hit him up, nigga. We didn't heard worse. You want to die on your birthday? We didn't heard all kind of crazy.
But most of that was true. He did hit his wife up. I'm just saying.
So if it's true, it can never be disrespect.
Kendrick better pull out a young girl with some.
He kissed a 17-year-old on stage. That ain't a pedophile.
What about all the stuff that Drake said about him, though?
Hold up. He kissed a 17-year-old on stage.
Yeah, it's documented.
What's the age of consent in that state?
You got a point. Got a point there.
How old was he?
That's a good point.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But how can you sue if you've been talking noise too?
You said my partner had my baby. You said that the kid ain't mine. That's my homies. You said I beat my woman.
He probably do beat his woman. Oh, he has the burden of proof is on him for it.
Because I will tell you that if he said those things and those aren't true, it might be.
This is the other thing. So he, I don't know if you remember the tailor-made freestyle where he AI'd his voice as Tupac, and he told Kendrick, tell him that he asked Tupac. He said, tell him about the young girls. Basically, he invited that, and that's what the judge brought up, saying you told him to bring up him liking young girls. You said that in your own lyrics.
That's a defense. That's a defense. So it's kind of like when you have a trial, even I think in the Sean Combs trial, there was a portion of the trial where I think it was the state that tried to limit the defense's questioning on a certain subject.
Right.
But the catchphrase is you open the door.
Right.
If you talked about it to me, then I can talk about it to you.
Right.
I didn't bring it up.
Yeah, and he was the first one to do it. Mind you, he taunted him for 2 weeks.
If that's true, then yeah.
And I guess my question is, right, because I watch battle rap. They say I'll kidnap your granny. They say all kind of wild shit. At what point is it just trash talk? Is that not allowed? And I don't know. I just feel like suing for rap lyrics just seems really pussy, bro. I ain't gonna lie.
Look, you have two things here. Number one, every club this man go to, have been to for the last year.
Minor.
I'm sick of that shit.
That's a sick ass.
I'm sick of that.
That was a crazy bar though.
I'd have sued.
A minor is a crazy bar.
So that pisses you off, right? So that pisses you off.
He did it to me though.
Right? And so, you know, and then you got a record deal, or you got an executive, or you got a business deal, and somebody says, "Hey, Drake, keep Drake outside until I get my daughter upstairs." Right?
And Drake's like, bro, what?
What?
Hold on.
Man, I don't really like minors. What are you talking about? Right? But it's that type of perception that has been put out there.
Nah, I would have did it for me is I'd been outside and somebody's just like, "Hey, minor," and as I walk randomly down the street, somebody got to die, or I need to get paid.
Well, he tried to do the same thing to him.
But you got to remember, this got so bad that Rick Ross got jumped in Toronto.
Right.
Yeah, he did get jumped in Toronto. That's where I would stay if I was Drake. Because apparently he's a king out there or something.
But it limits where it probably limited his money.
For sure. Well, Larry, man, you just a wealth of knowledge, man. We just like to thank you for coming in and just giving us your great insight on these things, man. We hope somebody else get in trouble so we can keep having these conversations.
You know what? Watch this. Watch this. This is my suggestion to you guys, and we'll let the people decide. If the people message you guys about cases that they want to hear about and they want to know about, you know, they message you guys. You guys call me and we'll come and we'll talk about it.
For sure.
We'll talk about those cases, whether it's civil in nature, whether it's a case over money, or also cases over money.
Right.
But, you know, if it's a business to business, if they want to know what's going on with that, if they want to know about the lawsuits dealing with the president or the lawsuits dealing with immigration, we could talk about all of that. So
what I'd like to discuss next time, I want to see it unfold a little more, this DDG and this Holly Bailey situation. And how they we gonna hope, man. We gonna let it unfold a little more.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying.
Yeah, we all discussed it.
Jeff, like, if it's rap, you can say what you want to say. Let them be. First Amendment, Second Amendment.
Have you heard some of these?
With that being said,
they kidnapped Drake.
Look. Let's just be honest. There is music out there with great beats that we've listened to, and we get into the flow of the beat, and then we get to going with the lyrics, and then we get to a point where it's like, hey, what did he just say?
Yep.
What did she just say?
If Biggie would have sued Tupac over hit him up, you would have looked at Biggie like a straight.
No, he would have lost, because I guarantee you, Tupac with his devious self probably had video or some kind of witness that would have testified to the fact. Yeah. And they would have called her up.
Call her to the stand.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yep. So, nah, bro. I know you keep going back to the hit him up, but he hit him up.
He did hit him up.
Or he said he hit him up. I don't know.
Right.
Allegedly he hit him up. I wasn't there.
And that being said, Larry Taylor, the real life lawyer.
Yeah.
You are, and always will be, a real life street star.
One more thing. We got a winner.
Oh, we got a winner.
The $500 contest.
Who was it?
I can't tell you now.
Oh.
You gotta catch me Friday. So I'll make a video, post. So make sure you check out Real Life Street Stars on Friday. Make sure you go to RealLyfe Lawyer on Instagram. And you go to the Tailor-Made Conversations on YouTube. The announcement will be made on Friday.
Let's go.
So watch for the countdown.
And we out.
And we out.
Real life. If that shit ain't real life, it ain't real life. Just ain't real. Real life street stars. You know what time it is.